Hello and welcome to Rx30 Unlocked, the podcast where we dive into Rx30 and uncover tips, tricks, and strategies to help you maximize its full potential. This is our third episode. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification so you don't miss any updates. If you have any questions during this episode, email us at rx30unlocked@outcomes.com and we will talk about it live. So I'm your host, Dahlia, and on this episode, I will be going over the hotkeys and shortcuts. So let's get started. So from the main screen, prescription fill screen, if you notice at the bottom right, it says Alt-H for alternate key hints. So Alt-H could be hints, hotkeys, help. When you press the Alt-H, you will see a bunch of hotkeys. So we're going to go over many of these hotkeys. So let's start with Alt-B. So Alt-B is the blood pressure tracker. So we integrate with PharmaSmart, and the patient would need to get a PharmaSmart card in order to track those blood pressure. And in the patient's profile, you would see a stethoscope. So the stethoscope would appear right around here, and you would do is click on it to bring up the patient's blood pressure and tracking. You can also do Alt-B in that patient's profile, and it would immediately come up. Now, Alt-C is the Patient Engagement Center. So Alt-C will bring up the Patient Engagement Center. It will open up a browser, open up Outcomes MTM, where you can log in. If you already have your ID and password stored, you could just select it, and it takes you directly to that. Let's go to Alt-D. So Alt-D is Rx30's scanning and document scanning and management. So Alt-D is DocuStore. I'm going to pull up a patient. Let's go ahead and pull up a patient, and I'll show you what that does. So Mary Poppins, Alt-D is DocuStore. I've got a bunch of documents stored in here. If you want to scan a driver's license, what you would do is Alt-D, F4 new, and you can either scan it with your scanner or you can acquire a file by pressing F8 options and acquire a file. Now this file would need to be saved in the Rx30 directory, and it can't be more than 8 characters long, and it has to be in a JPEG format. Okay, so the driver's license, once you scan the driver's license, you can use the Alt-L key to view the driver's license, either in the patient's record, in the prescription, as well as Alt-D for DocuStore. You can also scan the insurance card. Okay. Once you scan an insurance card, you can use the Alt-L to view the insurance. Alt-I to view the insurance. Okay. So now let's take a look at Alt-E. So Alt-E is patient education. In the prescription, you can press Alt-E, and it will bring up a printer selection where you can actually select the printer to print the patient education. Alt-G is the adaptive refill analysis, and if I press Alt-G, here's my patient education. I'm going to close that. So Alt-G is if you're using the virtual pharmacist and you're using the adaptive refill, if you have the prescription set to run every 5 days early every month, when you enter 5 days in here, so what happens is that adaptive refill is a smart technique or scheduling technique that it avoids the refill too soon, and it avoids getting a refill too soon. You would enter 5, and then F4 begin, and F5 print. And this will tell you when the next refill is due. So if for some reason your virtual pharmacist ran and a specific prescription did not run, you can check it in the prescription, Alt-G, to see when Rx30 says that it's supposed to be filled. Okay. Alt H, like I mentioned, is hints. You can bring up the hotkeys and shortcuts. Okay. Alt I is also image control. So if you have an image, for example, this hard copy image here, I can do an Alt R to view the actual hard copy, and then I can do an Alt-I, image control, which will take me to the image, and then you can do F5 notes to enter any notes on the hard copy. The next function key, or the hotkey, is Alt-J, and Alt-J is workflow tracking. So I'm going to press Alt-J, and this was actually specifically for the stores in New Jersey, but anyone can use it, of course. This is if you don't want to enable a specific stage in workflow, like for example, PV1, you can have this box pop up and you can automatically enter the initials of who actually reviewed that PV1 or that stage. Alt-K is the one-time note. So I'm going to enter a one-time note in here by pressing Alt-K. You enter the one-time note, and in workflow, in RPH review, when the pharmacist is reviewing the prescription, that one-time note is going to automatically pop up. Okay. I mentioned the Alt-L, which is the license. You'll be able to pull up that license from the prescription or from the patient's profile. The Alt-M, what that does, it prints the med guide. So if it doesn't have a med guide for that particular drug, then you're going to get the message, no med guides for glipizide. But if you do have a med guide, there's a med guide for that particular drug, then it's going to prompt you, or it's going to ask you to select a printer, and you can print it to your printer. All right? So Alt-N is Rx dosing validation for nursing home. I'm going to go over to the nursing home side. And if I press Alt-N, it's going to give me an Rx dosing validation. So this basically ensures that your quantity and your day supply matches up. So if you are dispensing 15 tablets, but it's half a tablet, but you have 31-day supply, that's not going to match up. It's not going to validate. So it's going to validate for you. Now the Alt-O is the online claims tracking. So in the prescription, if I do Alt-O, it's going to give me all of the claim history. This is every transaction that goes out, online transactions. So all of the paid, the reversals, the rejections, you're going to see them here. So if you're wanting to look at a specific claim, you want to make sure that you arrow up and down and then press enter, and then you'll have the F7 detail. And this claim response or online trace is twofold, right? One is the claim detail, which is the data that's being sent out to the insurance company. And then there's the F3 response. So it's easier to take a look and see what's rejected, what the plan is looking for. So if the plan says, I need you to send a 1 or a 2 in field 307-67, you can go down the list and make sure that that's what's being sent. Okay. Now Alt-P, if I press Alt-P in this prescription, it's going to give me a list of all of the plans, or what the plans have paid for this particular drug. So when you're matching up, or you're trying to figure out which plan is paying the most or best, you want to make sure that you're looking at the quantities. Like, for example, this SimCare 30-day supply, they paid $271, and then Medicaid, Kansas Medicaid only paid $123. So make sure you're looking at the day supply and the quantity, and you're not looking at maybe 90-day supply. Okay. So the next shortcut or hotkey is Alt-Q. So Alt-Q is to select a bin. So if you're filling a prescription for insulin that needs to be refrigerated, you can do Alt-K while you're filling it and then select the refrigerator. You can also select, if it's a compound, you can select mixing area or any of these options. And we also have number bins all the way down to the bottom. If you're using like a pick point, you can select a number bin if the patient has multiple scripts in that particular bin. So Alt-R just recalls the last prescription that was on my screen under the edit mode. And let's take a look at Alt-S. So I'm going to pull up a prescription that was already picked up and do an Alt-S. And it gives me the date and time and the signature of the patient. And you can also print that in the Rx log, but this is a lot quicker that you can pull up the script, Alt-S, and take a look at when it was delivered or picked up and the time. And on-demand texting. So Alt-T is on-demand texting. If I'm filling a prescription, I can type Alt-T, and there's prescriptions are ready for pickup, contact the pharmacy, and then there's a custom text. I can type in patient or medications on order. The delivery person's going to be there after 5 o'clock today, but be sure you put in your pharmacy name and number in that custom text. Okay. So Alt-U, if I type Alt-U or press Alt-U, excuse me, it's going to take me to this Rx Saver, and it's going to tell me what other pharmacies nearby is selling that medication for. So we have Publix here selling that medication for $7.33, Winn-Dixie, Bailey's Pharmacy, the Medicine Shop. It also shows that they're using a coupon. So if you click on Show Coupon, it gives you the bin and PCN that you would bill to get that discount. Okay, and let's see. So Alt-W is to set a patient as a waiter, or you can even set it to, if the patient says, I don't want to wait for it, I want to pick it up on Friday at 3 o'clock. You can type in FR3P for Friday at 3 p.m. and it'll reorganize or reset that prescription, how it shows up in workflow. Okay. So the Alt-X is for controlled substance. It only shows up on a controlled substance. Let me see if I have a controlled substance here. So this is a controlled substance reporting data. Some states require that you enter like the patient's relationship code or the ID and a state or some kind of ID number. This is where you would indicate that. Okay. If I'm in a prescription and I type Alt-Y, it's going to give me a list of workflow stages and the date and time that that stage was completed. And the Alt-Z, let me clear my screen out here. So the Alt-Z is a test adjudication. So I'm going to do Alt-Z, and you're going to notice that it says test claim adjudication enabled. So any prescription that I run while this test adjudication is enabled, it's going to immediately adjudicate it and reverse it and put it back on hold. So you want to make sure that you do Alt-Z to disable that feature. Okay, so Control P will print the screen, any screen that you would like. It will print the screen. Okay. Control Y clears anything from the cursor to the end of the line. So if I want to clear out this doctor's name, Control Y will clear out from the cursor to the end of the line. Now there is a Shift F1, there's a hidden shortcut that I can quickly go to a price check, I can go to a calculator, or I can do the DocuStore. So the calculator, this is what it would look like. Okay. All right, so now if I pull up a patient's profile, from here there are some shortcuts, right? So I can do F1 find and start typing the name of the drug. Okay. I can drill down by pressing the F7 detail. It gives me more information on that particular prescription. If I press F5, it's going to give me a list of all of the refills. If this medication was refilled before, it gives me the date, the refill number, the day supply, the quantity, and the copay. From here, I can F5 fax. I can tag multiple prescriptions to fax more than one prescription or more than one drug to the same doctor. Okay. Also from here, the patient's profile, there are some hidden shortcuts that is not shown on here, but if I type the letter E, so notice I'm on the prescription fill screen. I've got the atorvastatin lit up or highlighted, and if I type the letter E, it's going to bring up that script under the edit screen. So many might not know that, and they're having to do F7 to toggle back from the fill to the edit. Well, you don't need to do that. You could just highlight the prescription and E for edit, and it brings it up in the edit screen. Okay. Another option would be D for dispense. So if you have an icon, if you have a Vivid pill counter or one of our pill counters, right, or a robotic dispensing system, you would highlight the prescription and type in D to resend that prescription over to the robotic dispensing system. From here, I can type in L for label to print one label for that prescription that I have highlighted. But if I want a label for, let's say, my top 5 drugs here, I would tag all 5 scripts and type in the letter L, and I would get one label for each of those prescriptions that are tagged. And to untag, I would just go up and spacebar and untag it. So the spacebar is another shortcut that you can tag or untag a script. From here, you can also type in the letter S for sync to sync a patient's medications. Instead of having to go to the fill screen and number 18 sync, you can do it right from the patient's profile. From here as well, the prescription fill, you can transfer out a prescription. You don't have to go to the edit screen. From here, if I want to just transfer this one prescription, I can type the letter T for transfer. It brings up the transfer out box. If I want to, excuse me, if I want to transfer out an entire profile, I would tag the profile or all the prescriptions to be transferred out, and then the letter T. And once you enter the outbound pharmacy or the transfer out pharmacy in that first box, you want to make sure that you F4 save, and then it will save all of that information in all of those scripts that you've tagged. So you're not having to constantly select the same pharmacy, transfer out pharmacy all the time. Okay. And from the profile, I can type the letter V for void to see the voids, and if I type V again, it will hide the voids. So that is a system parameter that you can have enabled at all times, but if you don't want that enabled at all times, you can quickly view what was voided from the profile by just typing the letter V for void. Okay. And the copy and paste. Now there is copy and paste. So I can copy anything from like my Rx memo to the patient memo, or the doctor memo or drug memo. You can copy by typing in the field itself. So let's type something here. Transfer out. Or how about this? Oh, patient, 5 tablets. You can do a Control-C to copy that, and then you can go into the patient's profile and Control-V to paste that information that you just copied. Okay. So now that I've gone over the hotkeys and shortcuts, I want to go over some quick searches. So how to search a patient quickly. So from the prescription fill screen, I can search a patient by date of birth. There's a couple of formats. I can type in 07/04/50 for their date of birth and pull up that patient. If I don't want to use the slashes, I can start with the equal sign and then 07/04/50. Now I can put the 2-digit year or the 4-digit year. Either one works. But you do have to have the 2-digit month and 2-digit day. Telephone number, I need to start with a plus sign, followed by either the 7 digits or 10-digit phone number. So 407. This will bring up every patient with that phone number. If I want to search their cell phone number, plus C, you must put a plus and a C. It doesn't have to be capital. It could be capital or small case. And again, you can do the 7-digit or the 10-digit number. Okay. Medical record number. So you can search by medical record number with a $sign. You put a $sign in the patient's field and then start entering the medical record number. Now you can put the entire medical record or partial. Okay. The social security number, you want to start with a $sign or a hashtag for the younger generation. So I'm going to type in my partial social security number and find that patient. Okay. You can also search a patient if you don't remember how to spell the first name. You could just put a comma and then type in the first name, and you can find everyone with the first name of Mary. Okay. Let's take a look here. So, you can search by last name. You can also search by last name and date of birth. So I can put in partial last name or the full last name, comma, and the date of birth. Now you must put a slash to search by last name and date of birth. You can always pull up a patient by the prescription number if you know the prescription number. Okay. You can always scan the barcode on the label, on the prescription label, to bring up that script as well. Okay. And something that you might not know is that you can actually search a patient by the internal key. Now, for those that are using the Pfizer Share the Care program, where the data gets sent, a file gets sent with just a patient internal key, and the payment comes back with the internal key and not a patient name, you can actually, I'll show you here in the patient. At the bottom right, where it says patient record maintenance, it says patient ID. The first 6 digit is your Rx30 license, followed by a comma and the internal patient key. And so if I want to search that patient, I can first put a dash and then enter the patient key, and I will get that patient. Okay. Now, for doctors, to search by doctor, let me start filling a prescription for this patient. You can search a doctor by DEA number. First, you want to put an equal sign, followed by the DEA number. And again, you can put a partial DEA number or the entire DEA number. You can search by NPI number. That would be a $sign. Again, partial or the entire number. You can search by license number, doctor license number. I'm going to start with a $sign or a hashtag. That patient, that doctor's not in there. Okay, there's a doctor. And also you can search by phone number. Again, a + for phone number, 7 or 10-digit number. Okay. I want to also cover the drug short code. So in the drug record, I can select a drug and I can put in a short code. Let's take a look. I think I have one already in there, but if not, azithromycin 250. Okay, so I do have a short code here where it says short name in the drug record called Z-Pak. So if I'm filling a prescription for that patient, for a patient for that drug, all I'm going to do is type in Z-Pak. It pulls up that specific NDC, and it automatically adds the directions, the quantity, and the day supply. And I'll go to that drug record and show you how I did that. So again, I put the sure code of Z-Pak. I put the SIG Z-Pak, and then in the F7 number 1 assigned codes, I told the default quantity, I entered the default quantity and the default day supply. Okay. So now I'm going to search, I'll show you how to search insurance companies by BIN number. So I can go into the third plan record, I can go to the patient plan record and enter a £, 003858 is the BIN, enter, and it gives me all of the plans that are locally in my database by that BIN number. If I also want to search by PCN, I'm going to put a £, 003858 / and the PCN of A4. And that gives me only the plans with that BIN and PCN. So one thing that I want to show you is that you must use that £. If I don't use that £, I'll show you what happens. 003858, it's going to look for the plan code called 003858. And obviously that's not the correct BIN and PCN for that plan code. So you can essentially have a plan code called 003858, and if you don't put a £, on before entering that BIN number, it's going to pull up the wrong plan. So please enter the £, or the hashtag. Okay. And let's see, I think that concludes our hotkeys and tips and shortcuts. Let's see if you have any questions. Did any questions come in? Looks like we have our first question. Is there a way to mark a prescription out of stock in the Rx status field on the patient Rx profile? So to answer that question, if you can have the label department can print out the on-hand quantity on the label to indicate that there is a negative quantity. So on the actual profile, there isn't a way to indicate that, although actually there is a way, I'm so sorry. You can actually create hot hold reasons. So in the system parameters, there's hold reason, and you can say out of stock. You can create one called out of stock. So that's only if you're going to put the prescription on hold and say, select the hold reason out of stock. Okay. Now if I take a prescription out of hold, and I'm going to put the prescription back on hold, and it's going to prompt me for a hold reason. That's where I would select out of stock. So now you would see hold out of stock. Any other questions? Let's see, Johnny has a question. What might prevent the copy and paste function from working as expected? So Johnny, if you're copying and pasting from outside of Rx30, the copy and paste will not work. So if you're trying to copy from like a browser, a web browser, or a Word document and pasting it into Rx30, that's not going to work. It only works within Rx30. So you can copy like a patient note into like the Rx memo or the patient, doctor, drug memo, and to different areas within Rx30. Okay. So the next question is there a knowledge article with these hotkeys? Yes, actually there is. If you log into the Client Success Center, there should be documents in there that you can download. There's videos in there as well. There is a document that's, hotkeys. If you like, we can actually email that to you. When we're done here, we can email that to you as well. We've also sent out mouse pads that have those hotkeys on the mouse pads. Let's see, the next question is coming from Russell's Pharmacy. From which screen in Rx30 can you initiate an on-demand text message to a patient? Okay, so on-demand text messaging can be done from the patient's profile, from the prescription. So let's take a look. So I'm in the prescription. Alt-T, and that comes up, send text message. I can be in the patient's profile and Alt-T. I can also be in workflow. So if I'm in packaging and I have a patient up, I can do Alt-T to text message. Now this one is coming up in Spanish because I have the patient's language in their profile is set to Spanish. But if I switch it over to English, it will change the message to English. Another question is coming in, is there a way to tag drugs on a patient profile that they are currently on? So if I'm understanding that question, maybe like over-the-counter medication or prescriptions that they may have purchased like mail order or something, and yes, absolutely. So if you go into the page, the prescription, if I go to F8, number 5, Pro-DUR analysis, it's going to come up with the patient OTC drug profile. Now, this is not just for over-the-counter medication. You can enter drugs like, let's say, clopidogrel. You can enter, vitamin D, any over-the-counter medication, any drugs that the patient may have purchased outside of your pharmacy. Now you do an F4 done, and that's going to bring up the drug-to-drug interactions, and that will stay on the profile. Okay. So let's see, another question is coming in from Samia. Is it possible to create and save multiple text message templates? So Samia, if you have, if you're using UpDocs or SRFax, I believe UpDocs has a way to create templates. You may want to check with them. If they do, then that's a way to create templates. But in Rx30, there's only the 2 template. The prescriptions are ready for pickup, the contact the pharmacy, and then there's a custom text. There's another question coming in. I love all these questions. Is there a way to attach a fax to a prescription as a hard copy image without having to print out the fax and scan the image? Well, that's a great question. So let's go there. So F8 queues, and I'm going to go to number 14, fax queue and reporting. I currently have my system set up for SRFax, so all of my faxes are coming into my system. If I go to my F8 inbox, you're going to see all of these faxes that came in, and this one is already associated. So if I fax a doctor a fax through my either SRFax or UpDocs, and the doctor replies back, right? It reads the OCR code, and it links it automatically. But if they decide to just fax a regular fax that's not responding back to your fax, then there is a way to associate it. So if I select this fax right here, I can do F6 link to and type in the prescription number, and that will automatically link it to that prescription. Great question. Okay. Another question coming in from Garden View Pharmaceuticals. Can a voided prescription be retrieved? Yes, great question. So from the patient's profile, if I do V for void, I'm going to highlight that script. Okay. Type in the letter E for edit. Okay. Now notice that this is a refill, so you cannot restore or bring back or retrieve a refill. You just refill it as normal. But if this was an original script or original that you voided accidentally, you would have an F8 unvoid function key on that screen. Okay. If you do remember the prescription number, you can also press F7, start on the edit screen, type in that prescription number, it will come up, and now you would see the F8 unvoid. Any other question? I'm just loving these questions. Keep them coming. Are you easily able to fax multiple refill requests to the doctors? Yes, you can. So in the profile, if I want to, let's say I'm going to go down, page down a couple pages, and I'm going to select this drug and that drug and whichever drugs that you want to select. Now I press F5, and that's going to come up with a screen where you can actually fax. So if it's the same doctor, if all those medications are the same doctor, then you're going to have one sheet of paper with all those prescriptions on that one sheet. Now, if you can tag 10, and if there are 2 different doctors from those 10 scripts, then there will be 2 pages, right? 1 page for the one doctor and 1 page for the other doctor. Great question. So there's another question coming in. Is there a way to toggle between the refill edit screen while in a patient's profile without having to go back to the home screen each time? Yes, actually. From this screen, press F7 to toggle back and forth. But the easiest way is just to pull up the patient, highlight the script, E for edit. Now you're in the edit screen. Okay. F2 clear will take me back to the fill screen, so I'm not having to press any additional keys. Again, I can tag more than one script, and then E for edit. Once I do the work that I need to do on here, whether I reverse it or change it, or I can do F2 clear, and the next script will come up. Again, F2 clear, and the next script will come up. Okay. So let's see, another question coming in. It's in episode 1, you talked about using an employee badge in workflow. How can I print the badge, and can I add an employee photo to the badge? Oh, that's a great question. Yes, there is. So I'm going to navigate over to System and Employees, and I'm going to pull up an employee in my screen. This one already has a photo. But if I wanted to add a photo, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that that photo or that image is in JPG format or PNC format, and it's saved into the Rx30 directory. Then you would go to F5 image, and from here you would enter the name of the file. So I think I have an image here, my image actually, PG. So I just type in, and the file name can't be more than 8 characters. So you want to make sure that you limit it to 8 characters or less. And then again, a format of an extension of .jpg or .pnc. So enter that, and now you have the image, and you're going to save it. I don't want to override this, but that's how you would first save that image to the employee. Then you would go into workflow and number 16 configuration. And now F5 badges, and it's going to ask you if you want to select a specific employee. I'm going to say yes. Otherwise, you're going to have a badge for all of your employees. And then I will select the employee to print the badge. And there is an Avery form that labels that you can purchase and print those on there, or you can print it to plain paper if you like, and then cut them out. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see. Can you pull up the allergy DUR screen you were on? I noticed there was a customized allergy DUR note. How does that work? So let's take a look. The DUR allergy. F8, number 5. Okay. Were you referring to, I think you were referring to the allergy notes. If that's what you were referring to, you can go into the patient's profile, and in the notes, you'll notice the allergies, right? If I have a little red asterisk, that means I have a note for that particular allergy. So I'm going to go down here, highlight this drug here, and then F7 notes, and now I can put in, whatever allergy or whatever reaction that patient's going to have. So let's say hives, okay? And now you'll see the little red X. So whenever the DUR comes up, that note that you entered in that allergy will show up. So any other questions? Let me see. We have any other questions? So it looks like that's it for the questions. And as a reminder, if you have any questions or if you have a topic that you would like to discuss in the next episode, please email us at rx30unlocked@outcomes.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, have a great day.